Let me ask you something uncomfortable. Have you ever felt like you're still the man in your relationship? But somehow you're no longer fully yourself? You speak more carefully now. You explain more than you used to. You avoid certain topics. You give up small things to keep the peace. Nothing dramatic happened. No obvious betrayal. No shouting. And yet, something shifted. What if I told you that manipulation in love rarely looks like control? It looks like care. It sounds like concern. It feels like attachment. Until one day you realize, you're no longer leading your life. You're managing someone else's emotions. This is not about blaming women. This is about protecting your frame. Because the most dangerous cage is the one you don't see being built. And if you don't recognize the signs early, you won't lose her. You'll lose yourself. Welcome to the channel, Stoic Love Wisdom. This is where lessons about love will help you better understand this complex emotion. In today's video, we will learn together about warning signs. This woman is manipulating and taming you. These are things that can change the way you perceive love in life. Be prepared because the secrets and insights you are about to discover may make you look back at yourself and the relationships around you. Before starting, find a quiet space, put on your headphones and relax. Let your mind completely immerse in these shares and enjoy every wonderful moment. Are you ready to discover new things about love? Let's start this journey with us right now. Part 1, the sweet trap you don't see coming. Let me speak to you as a man who has loved, lost, rebuilt, and learned the hard way. Not from books. Not from podcasts. But from silence. From sleepless nights. From staring at a phone that didn't light up. There is a kind of danger in love that doesn't shout. It whispers. It does not attack your strength. It studies it. And then slowly, it reshapes it. Today, we speak about a hard truth. The dangerous signs that a woman is manipulating and domesticating you, not loving you. Before you react emotionally, understand something clearly. This is not about blaming women. This is not about hatred. This is about awareness. A Stoic man does not accuse. He observes. And if you do not learn to observe, you will slowly become something you never intended to be, a man who asks permission to exist. The first illusion, she just cares so much. Manipulation rarely begins with cruelty. It begins with care. She wants to know where you are. Who you're with. Why you didn't reply. Why you need that hobby. Why you talk to that female friend. At first, it feels flattering. You think. She's invested. She doesn't want to lose me. She just loves deeply. And maybe she does. But here is the line most men miss. Love respects freedom. Control fears it. The dangerous sign is not that she asks questions. It's that your answers start to feel like reports. You begin explaining harmless things as if you're defending yourself in court. You adjust your tone. You pre-filter your stories. You stop mentioning certain names. Not because you are guilty. But because it's easier. And that is how the cage is built. One small accommodation at a time. The second sign, your world starts shrinking. A strong relationship expands your life. A manipulative one slowly reduces it. Pay attention. You see your friends less. You abandon routines you once loved. You avoid places that trigger her insecurity. You silence opinions that cause conflict. And you call this maturity. No. Maturity is choosing peace without losing yourself. Manipulation is losing yourself to maintain peace. A Stoic man understands this principle. If peace requires you to shrink your character, it is not peace, it is surrender. The manipulation is subtle. She rarely says, stop seeing your friends. Instead she says, I just feel uncomfortable. I guess I'm not a priority. Do what you want. That last one is the most dangerous. Do what you want, said with disappointment, is emotional leverage. You go. But you don't enjoy it. You return early. You compensate. Eventually, you stop going. And she never had to forbid you. That is sophisticated control. The third sign, you feel guilty for having standards. This is where domestication begins. When you start apologizing for boundaries. You say, I don't like when you flirt like that. She responds, so now I can't even be friendly. You say, I need time alone sometimes. She responds, wow. I didn't know I was that suffocating. Notice what happened. You expressed a boundary. She reframed it as an attack. Now you are defending yourself. Over time, you stop expressing standards. You become flexible. Then flexible becomes passive. Then passive becomes compliant. A domesticated man does not lead. He negotiates his own comfort. And here is the brutal truth. A woman may say she wants a strong man. But if she can emotionally overpower you, she will test how far she can go. Not consciously evil. Just human nature testing limits. And if you show that your limits move, they will be moved again. The fourth sign, emotional highs and lows become addictive. This is psychological. If the relationship feels like a roller coaster, extreme affection followed by withdrawal, be careful. 1 week. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Next week. I don't know if this is working. Then. Intense intimacy. Deep connection. Future planning. Then. Coldness. Distance. Criticism. Your nervous system becomes addicted. You start chasing the good version of her. And this is where manipulation becomes chemical. You are no longer grounded. You are reacting. A Stoic man remains internally stable regardless of external weather. If her mood controls your peace, she controls you. Ask yourself honestly. Are you choosing her? Or are you trying to win her approval repeatedly? If it feels like you must constantly prove yourself to keep the relationship stable, you are not in love. You are in performance. The fifth sign, you fear losing her more than losing yourself. This is the ultimate red flag. When the thought of losing her terrifies you more than the thought of becoming smaller. You tolerate disrespect. You tolerate emotional games. You tolerate double standards. Because the alternative feels unbearable. Let me tell you something difficult. Any relationship where you are afraid to walk away is already unbalanced. Strength in love comes from choice, not dependency. When she senses you cannot leave, your negotiating power disappears. Not because she is cruel. But because power naturally shifts toward the one who is less afraid. This is not about dominance. It is about psychological balance. Stoic reflection. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The moment your emotional state depends entirely on her reactions, you have surrendered that power. A woman who loves you will challenge you, yes. She will disagree, yes. But she will not require you to become smaller in order to stay. The early signs of manipulation do not look like war. They look like warmth. Concern. Attachment. That is why most men miss them. They wake up months. Sometimes years, later wondering. When did I stop being myself? The answer. The day you chose comfort over clarity. The day you avoided conflict instead of asserting boundaries. The day you confused emotional intensity with emotional health. Love is not only about happy moments, but also about challenges that help us realize our inner strength. It is through difficulties that we learn patience, tolerance, and how to love without losing ourselves. This is also the reason why I share stories here, so that you can find calmness and wisdom in your journey of love. If you feel these words touch you, please take a second to click like to spread this message. And if you haven't subscribed yet, click subscribe with the notification bell, to always be the first to receive new shares. Don't forget to leave a comment below, share your feelings or a lesson you learned after listening to this story. Each line you share is a way for us to connect and accompany each other. Now, get ready, because the next part will bring you even deeper insights. Part 2. The psychological weapons you don't notice until it's too late. Let me continue as a man who has walked through the fog and learned to see clearly. Manipulation in relationships rarely looks like shouting. It rarely looks like obvious dominance. The most dangerous form is psychological. It makes you question your memory, your standards, your instincts, and eventually, your sanity. A Stoic man does not panic when emotions rise. He steps back and observes patterns. So let us dissect the deeper tactics. 1. Gaslighting, making you doubt your own reality. This is one of the most subtle and destructive forms of manipulation. You confront her calmly. You said something last night that felt disrespectful. She responds, I never said that. You're imagining things. You're too sensitive. Why do you always twist everything? Now pause. You were calm. You were clear. You remember it. But suddenly, you are defending your perception. Gaslighting works because it attacks your certainty. And certainty is a man's internal compass. If she consistently denies obvious facts or reframes events to make you appear irrational, pay attention. A healthy partner says, I didn't mean it that way. Let's talk. A manipulative partner says, that never happened. You're dramatic. Over time, you stop trusting your interpretation of events. You start thinking, maybe I overreacted. Maybe I'm insecure. Maybe I'm the problem. A Stoic man examines himself honestly. But he does not abandon reality to preserve comfort. If your clarity constantly dissolves after conversations with her, you are not confused. You are being psychologically repositioned. 2. Silent punishment, withdrawal as control. Silence can be mature. But silence can also be a weapon. She is warm when you comply. Cold when you assert yourself. You express a boundary. She becomes distant. You disagree respectfully. She withdraws affection. No yelling. No open conflict. Just emotional absence. This is conditioning. Humans are wired to avoid rejection. If every time you stand firm, she removes warmth, your nervous system begins to associate. Boundary equals loss. Compliance equals connection. This is how domestication begins. You start choosing harmony over honesty. You soften your tone. You delay confrontation. You tolerate more than you should. Eventually, you anticipate her reactions before they happen. You adjust automatically. And that is the moment you are no longer leading your own emotional state. You are responding to cues like a trained animal. Hard words. But necessary. A Stoic man does not beg for warmth. He offers it freely, but he does not chase it when it is withheld as punishment. 3. Conditional affection, love that must be earned. There is a dangerous shift when love feels transactional. She says, I just want you to be better. At first, that sounds supportive. But observe closely. Is better aligned with your growth? Or aligned with her preferences? Do you feel encouraged? Or evaluated? If affection increases only when you behave according to her expectations, you are being shaped. Like clay. Approval becomes currency. And you begin performing. You dress differently because she prefers it. You speak differently around her friends. You suppress jokes she doesn't like. You filter opinions to avoid tension. Again, adaptation in relationships is normal. Erasing your personality is not. A Stoic approach to love is simple. Love should refine you, not redesign you. If you feel like a project under construction instead of a partner in evolution, pause. Because domestication often hides behind self-improvement. 4. Emotional escalation, turning small issues into moral failures. This tactic is psychological leverage. You forget to text once. Suddenly it becomes. You don't care. You're just like my ex. I can't trust you. The scale of reaction exceeds the mistake. Why? Because exaggeration creates pressure. When minor errors become character assassinations, you feel constantly evaluated. You start walking on eggshells. This is not passion. This is destabilization. When the emotional cost of small mistakes becomes heavy, you become hypervigilant. Hypervigilant men are easy to control. Because they are always trying to avoid the next explosion. A Stoic man accepts responsibility for real mistakes. But he does not accept distorted accusations. If every disagreement becomes a referendum on your worth, something deeper is happening. 5. Isolation through emotional framing. She may never forbid you from seeing others. Instead, she frames your independence as emotional abandonment. You'd rather be with them than me. I guess I'm not important. I just feel alone in this relationship. Notice the framing. It forces you into a defensive position. Now you must prove loyalty. So you compensate. You reduce time with others. You overinvest at home. You reassure constantly. Eventually, your social world shrinks. Not by force. But by guilt. And isolation increases dependence. Dependence increases control. A Stoic man values connection. You're overthinking. You're not as confident as you pretend. You wouldn't handle that well. You're not really that ambitious. They are said casually. Sometimes jokingly. But repeated enough, they erode. Confidence is not destroyed overnight. It is chipped away. If she plants seeds of doubt about your competence, masculinity, or capability, repeatedly, observe carefully. A loving partner builds your strength. A manipulative one destabilizes it just enough to remain your emotional reference point. If she becomes the primary source of validation, and the primary source of doubt, you are caught in a loop. And loops are difficult to escape. Stoic grounding. In the Enchiridion, Epictetus teaches. Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. What is in your power? Your perception. Your standards. Your response. What is not in your power? Her moods. Her tactics. Her insecurities. But here is the key. You are responsible for what you tolerate. If you tolerate psychological destabilization in the name of love, you participate in your own conditioning. And understand this clearly. Manipulation does not always come from malice. Sometimes it comes from fear. Sometimes from insecurity. Sometimes from trauma. But intention does not erase impact. If the dynamic weakens your character, it must be addressed. Calmly. Directly. Firmly. Without anger. Without cruelty. without emotional collapse. That is Stoic love. Part 3, the day you stopped leading, and didn't even notice. There is a moment in every unhealthy relationship when a man crosses an invisible line. No argument marks it. No dramatic betrayal announces it. It is quieter than that. It is the moment he stops leading his own emotional life and starts managing hers instead. I have been there. And if you are honest with yourself, you may recognize it too. This is not about control. This is not about dominance. This is about frame. A Stoic man understands that whoever controls the emotional frame of the relationship controls the direction of it. And when you slowly surrender that frame, you do not even realize it's happening. 1. You start negotiating your core values. At first, it is small. You compromise on preferences. That is normal. But then it shifts. You compromise on principles. You say, I don't tolerate disrespect. But you tolerate it. Because addressing it creates tension. You say, I value honesty. But you ignore small lies, because confronting them feels exhausting. You say, I need time for my goals. But you abandon focus, because she feels neglected. A Stoic does not cling rigidly to ego. But he does not abandon his foundation either. Once your core values become negotiable, you are no longer grounded. You are adjustable. And adjustable men are easy to reshape. 2. You become hyper-focused on her emotional weather. Pay attention to this carefully. Do you wake up wondering what mood she is in? Do you check her tone before you speak? Do you adjust your energy based on her emotional temperature? If so, you are not living freely. You are scanning. You are adapting constantly. You are calculating. This creates anxiety. Because now your peace is conditional. When she is warm, you relax. When she is distant, you tense. This is emotional dependency disguised as connection. A Stoic man remains internally stable. Her mood may influence the interaction. But it does not determine his identity. If your nervous system rises and falls with her reactions, you have given her authority over your inner world. That is the beginning of domestication. 3. You confuse patience with passivity. Men often tell themselves, I'm just being patient. I'm mature. I don't want unnecessary conflict. And patience is powerful. But patience without boundaries becomes passivity. You stop calling out double standards. You stop challenging unfair accusations. You stop asserting expectations. Because you want peace. But peace built on silence is not peace. It is suppression. A Stoic does not explode emotionally. But he also does not swallow injustice repeatedly. True composure is calm assertion. Not quiet resentment. And here is the dangerous truth. When you consistently avoid confrontation, she learns that emotional pressure works on you. Not consciously malicious. Just learned behavior. Human beings repeat what works. If withdrawal, guilt, or escalation causes you to bend, those tactics will return. 4. You begin seeking permission instead of acting decisively. This shift is subtle. You used to say, I'm going to the gym tonight. Now you say, is it okay if I go to the gym tonight? You used to say, I'll be busy working late. Now you say, would you be upset if I worked late? This is not about courtesy. It is about internal authority. A grounded man informs, he does not request permission for his purpose. When you begin asking for approval for normal aspects of your life, you are unconsciously lowering your status in the dynamic. And she feels it. Not because she wants to dominate you, but because energy shifts. Confidence is sensed. Indecision is sensed. And once you start outsourcing your decisions emotionally, the power balance tilts. A Stoic man is considerate, but he remains sovereign. 5. You fear her disappointment more than your own regret. This is the turning point. You stop asking, "Will I respect myself?" and start asking, "Will she be upset?" Your compass changes direction. Her approval becomes the reference point. And slowly, your identity becomes relational instead of personal. You dress in ways that avoid criticism. You speak carefully to avoid triggering. You hold back opinions to prevent arguments. Not because you are weak, but because you are attached. Attachment without awareness becomes self-betrayal. And here is something difficult to accept. The more you abandon yourself to keep someone, the less they respect you. Not intentionally, but instinctively. Respect grows from boundaries. Attraction grows from stability. When you become emotionally reactive and approval-seeking, polarity fades. And with it, the dynamic shifts. 6. You lose the ability to walk away calmly. This is the ultimate indicator. If the idea of ending the relationship fills you with panic rather than clarity, your attachment has surpassed your autonomy. A Stoic man loves deeply. But he is not enslaved by fear of loss. He understands something fundamental. All external things are temporary. In Letters from a Stoic, Seneca reminds us that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. When you imagine life without her as unbearable, you exaggerate dependency. Ask yourself honestly. Are you staying because you choose her? Or because you fear emptiness? If fear drives the decision, manipulation has already rooted itself. Because power belongs to the one who is less afraid to lose. The internal shift, how men participate in their own domestication. This is the part most men avoid. Manipulation requires participation. Not blame, participation. You participate when you ignore early red flags. You prioritize chemistry over character. You avoid hard conversations. You sacrifice boundaries for temporary harmony. You attach faster than you evaluate. You see, a manipulative dynamic is rarely one-sided evil. It is a mismatch of emotional strength. If she senses insecurity, she may push. If she senses instability, she may test. Testing is natural. But if every test results in you shrinking, the pattern solidifies. A Stoic man does not react emotionally to tests. He remains steady. He does not escalate. He does not beg. He does not over-explain. He states his standard once. And then he observes. The difference between love and domestication. Love says, "I appreciate who you are." Domestication says, "I will reward you when you behave how I prefer." Love respects independence. Domestication fears it. Love supports growth. Domestication reshapes personality. Love allows disagreement without emotional punishment. Domestication uses emotional leverage to enforce alignment. And here is the uncomfortable reality. Sometimes a woman does not even realize she is doing this. Because she is acting from insecurity. From fear of abandonment. From previous wounds. But understanding her pain does not require sacrificing your stability. Compassion does not require submission. Stoic reflection. The Stoic path in love is not cold detachment. It is disciplined attachment. You choose fully. You commit intentionally. You love without fear. But you never abandon yourself in the process. If you must become smaller to keep someone, the relationship is not strengthening you. It is training you. At this point, you may have seen yourself in the stories above, sometimes weak, sometimes strong, and sometimes not knowing what to do in love. But it is those moments that make us real and worthy of respect. If you feel the same, please click like to let me know you are here, accompanying me. And if you haven't clicked subscribe yet, don't hesitate, because every day I will share more stories and new lessons, to help you have a calmer view of love. Now, let's move on to the final part, where we will touch on deeper things. Part 4, Why You Were Vulnerable, the psychology behind your attachment. Now we go deeper. Because if you only blame her, you will repeat the pattern. A Stoic man does not point fingers first. He turns inward. Not to shame himself, but to understand himself. If you were manipulated, if you were emotionally domesticated, there was an opening. And that opening did not begin with her. It began with you. This is not comfortable. But growth rarely is. 1. You mistook intensity for compatibility. Let me ask you something honestly. When you first met her, did it feel electric? Fast bonding. Deep conversations quickly. Intense attraction. Strong emotional pull. It felt rare. It felt powerful. But intensity is not stability. And many men, especially strong, ambitious ones, are drawn to intensity because it feels meaningful. If you grew up earning love through performance, if affection in your past was unpredictable, if validation came and went, then intensity feels familiar. The highs feel like proof of connection. But unpredictability disguised as passion is not love. It is emotional stimulation. A Stoic understands something most men ignore. What feels powerful is not always what is healthy. Compatibility is built on alignment of values. Intensity is built on chemistry. Chemistry can blind you. Alignment sustains you. 2. You needed validation more than you admitted. This is where ego gets involved. Many men say, "I don't need approval." But watch your reactions. Did her praise feel addictive? Did her attention boost your confidence? Did her withdrawal destabilize you? If yes, then part of your identity was being reinforced by her perception. And that is dangerous. Because when someone becomes your main mirror, you will shape yourself to keep that mirror positive. You will adjust behavior to maintain admiration. You will avoid actions that risk disapproval. Slowly, your identity becomes relational instead of internal. In Discourses, Epictetus reminds us that external validation is not within our control, and therefore cannot be the foundation of peace. If her approval determines your self-worth, you are vulnerable to manipulation. Not because she is powerful, but because your center is external. A Stoic man builds identity from internal standards. He welcomes appreciation, but he does not depend on it. 3. You feared being alone more than being controlled. Let's be honest. Modern loneliness hits men hard. We do not always talk about it. We distract ourselves. We grind. We stay busy. But when someone enters your life and brings warmth, affection, companionship, it feels relieving. So when red flags appear, you minimize them. You think, "No one is perfect. I can handle this. She just needs reassurance." And maybe she does. But sometimes you tolerate unhealthy behavior because the alternative, silence, feels heavier. If you fear solitude, you will accept instability. If you are uncomfortable alone, you will cling to intensity. A Stoic practices voluntary solitude. Not isolation, but comfort in his own presence. Because a man who is not afraid of being alone cannot be emotionally cornered. When walking away feels survivable, manipulation loses power. 4. You wanted to be the strong one. This is subtle but common. She showed insecurity. You stepped up. She showed jealousy. You reassured. She showed emotional instability. You stabilized. At first, this feels masculine. You are leading. You are grounding her. But over time, you become the emotional regulator for both of you. You carry the stability. You carry the patience. You carry the responsibility. And if she reacts dramatically, you tell yourself, she just needs understanding. The problem? You slowly normalize imbalance. You excuse behaviors that violate your peace. Because you see yourself as the resilient one. But strength does not mean absorbing endless dysfunction. A Stoic man supports. He does not rescue at the expense of himself. 5. You ignored early discomfort signals. Your body knows before your mind accepts. Did you ever feel slight tension early on? A comment that felt off. A reaction that felt disproportionate. A story that didn't align. But you brushed it aside. Because attraction was strong. Because connection felt rare. Because you did not want to seem paranoid. That was your intuition. Stoicism is not emotional numbness. It is emotional discipline guided by reason. Reason listens to patterns. If small discomfort appears repeatedly, it is not random. But many men override intuition to protect fantasy. And fantasy is fragile. 6. You confused empathy with self-sacrifice. You understood her past. Her trauma. Her insecurities. Her abandonment fears. You felt compassion. That is admirable. But empathy without boundaries becomes self-erasure. You tolerated mood swings because of her history. You tolerated control because of her past betrayal. You tolerated guilt tactics because of her anxiety. You became understanding to the point of silence. But here is a truth that must be accepted. Understanding someone's wounds does not mean accepting behavior that wounds you. Compassion is not compliance. A Stoic man can say, I understand your fear. But I will not accept this behavior. Calm. Firm. Unapologetic. 7. You derived identity from being chosen. This one is deep. When she selected you, admired you, prioritized you, it validated your value. Especially if you worked hard in life. Especially if you are competitive. Being chosen feels like winning. And when you tie your identity to being chosen, you will fight hard to remain chosen. Even if it costs you self-respect. Even if you bend further each time. But identity built on external selection is unstable. A Stoic man chooses himself first. Not selfishly. But structurally. He does not require someone else's preference to confirm his worth. The harsh but liberating truth. Manipulation works where insecurity lives. Control works where fear exists. Domestication works where identity is flexible. This does not make you weak. It makes you human. But awareness transforms vulnerability into strength. When you understand why you were susceptible, you stop repeating patterns. You stop being impressed by intensity. You stop being seduced by emotional chaos. You stop confusing attachment with alignment. And here is something powerful. When you rebuild internal stability, manipulative dynamics dissolve naturally. Not through confrontation. Not through aggression. But through grounded presence. Part 5, Reclaiming Your Frame, Strength Without Bitterness. Now we arrive at the final and most important part. Not how to expose her. Not how to dominate her. Not how to win. But how to reclaim yourself. Because the Stoic path is not revenge. It is restoration. If you have recognized manipulation, If you see how you participated. If you feel that quiet anger rising. Good. But anger is only useful if it becomes clarity. Let us finish this correctly. 1. Stop trying to fix her, start stabilizing yourself. The first mistake men make after awakening is confrontation driven by ego. They say, "You manipulated me. You controlled me. You gaslit me." And maybe she did. But understand something. You cannot argue someone into emotional maturity. You cannot lecture someone into respecting you. Respect is recalibrated through behavior. Not debate. So instead of fighting for power, withdraw emotional overinvestment. Speak less. Explain less. React less. Not coldly. Just calmly. When manipulation no longer produces a reaction, it loses effectiveness. This is not punishment. This is neutrality. A Stoic man controls what is within his domain. His response. 2. Reassert boundaries without drama. You do not need aggression to be firm. If she uses guilt. "I feel uncomfortable when you go out." Respond calmly. "I understand that. But I will maintain balance in my life." No justification. No apology for existing. If she escalates small issues. "I won't accept being spoken to that way." Then disengage if it continues. Boundaries are not threats. They are lines you enforce quietly. Consistency is what rebuilds your frame. If she tests again, you respond the same way. No anger. No lecture. No emotional spike. Over time, one of two things happens. She adjusts to your steadiness. Or she leaves because control no longer works. Both outcomes are clarity. 3. Detach from outcome, attach to principle. Here is where most men fail. They set boundaries hoping she will change. That is still outcome attachment. True Stoic discipline means this. You enforce standards because they are yours. Not because they produce a desired reaction. If she respects it, good. If she resists, observed. If she leaves, accepted. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius reminds himself that external events are not within our command, only our judgments and actions are. Your job is not to secure her loyalty. Your job is to act in alignment with your character. Outcome independence restores power. Because manipulation feeds on fear of loss. Remove the fear, remove the leverage. 4. Rebuild a life that is not centered on her. This is critical. Reclaim your routines. Reclaim your friendships. Reclaim your discipline. Go back to the gym. Back to your projects. Back to your solitude. Not to provoke her. But to stabilize yourself. When your life is expansive, relationship pressure decreases. When your world is small, every emotional shift feels catastrophic. A grounded man has multiple pillars. Purpose. Brotherhood. Health. Growth. If she is your only emotional pillar, instability is guaranteed. And here is something powerful. When you stop orbiting her emotionally, polarity often returns naturally. Because strength is attractive. Neediness is exhausting. But remember, do not perform independence to trigger her reaction. Build it because you need it. 5. Master calm disengagement. The strongest move is sometimes silence. If she escalates emotionally and you respond with composure, the dynamic shifts. If she attempts guilt and you refuse the frame, it dissolves. If she withdraws affection and you remain steady, power equalizes. Calm disengagement is not avoidance. It is disciplined non-participation in emotional games. A Stoic man does not argue inside chaos. He steps outside it. And here is the key. You must be genuinely prepared to walk away. Not as a tactic, but as truth. If you cannot leave, your boundaries are hollow. Strength is sensed when departure is possible. 6. Forgive. But do not forget the lesson. Bitterness is another trap. You can leave manipulation and become cold, suspicious, closed, guarded. That is not strength. That is armor built from fear. Instead, extract the lesson. You now recognize. Intensity is not compatibility. Guilt is not love. Emotional volatility is not passion. Approval is not identity. Attachment without autonomy is dependency. Forgive her internally, for your own peace. But upgrade your standards permanently. A Stoic man does not hate. He learns. 7. The difference between a woman who respects strength and one who fears it. This is how you tell moving forward. A woman who respects strength. Appreciates your independence. Accepts your boundaries. Communicates directly. Disagrees without emotional punishment. Supports your growth without reshaping your identity. A woman who fears strength. Tests constantly. Uses withdrawal as leverage. Frames independence as betrayal. Escalates small issues into character attacks. Feels threatened by your stability. The difference is not in what she says. It is in how she reacts when you remain steady. Final Stoic reflection. In Letters from a Stoic, Seneca teaches that a wise man is self-sufficient, not because he rejects connection, but because he does not collapse without it. Love deeply. Commit intentionally. But never surrender your internal authority. You do not need to dominate to lead. You do not need to control to be respected. You do not need to fear loss to maintain connection. The strongest man in the room is not the loudest. It is the one who can walk away calmly. And stay, without losing himself. If you take nothing else from this series, take this. The moment you choose self-respect over emotional comfort, manipulation loses its grip. And from that place, you can love without chains. You can connect without shrinking. You can commit without surrendering your identity. That is Stoic love. Not cold. Not cruel. But unshakable. Conclusion. Love should refine you, not reduce you. It should strengthen your character, not slowly reshape it to fit someone else's insecurities. Throughout this journey, we did not attack women. We examined dynamics. We exposed patterns. And most importantly, we confronted ourselves. Manipulation does not begin with chains. It begins with small compromises. A softened boundary. An unspoken discomfort. A silence chosen to avoid tension. And slowly, a man who once stood firm begins to bend. The Stoic path is not about suspicion. It is about awareness. It is not about emotional distance. It is about emotional discipline. You can love deeply. You can care intensely. You can commit fully. But you must never surrender your internal authority. The moment your peace depends entirely on someone else's mood, you have handed them power over your identity. A grounded man does not control. He does not dominate. He does not perform strength. He embodies it. He sets boundaries calmly. He observes behavior objectively. He detaches from outcomes. And if necessary, he walks away without noise. Not out of pride, but out of principle. Because real strength in love is not about taming another person. It is about being untamable in your values. When you reclaim your frame, manipulation fades. And what remains is simple. Love freely. Stand firmly. Choose consciously. That is Stoic love. Unshakable. Thank you for watching the whole video. I hope that today's sharing about love will bring you new perspectives and help you gain valuable lessons. If you find the video useful, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel and share it with your loved ones. I am very grateful for your companionship, and hope that each video will help you get closer to a happy and lasting love. See you in the next videos. Wish you a wonderful and inspired day.